Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
DJ PK, and we're joined by Josh Furlong covering the Utes for KSL Sports. He was up on the hill with PK and I at a cast of thousands as the Utes opened practice yesterday. The first of the, why is it fall camp, Josh? Isn't it summer camp? I mean, it's August.
I know. It's always my favorite. It's like we're fall camp, and sometimes it gets into July, and it's, like, cool. I don't feel it's 104 degrees, and it's fall camp. But you know what? We're going to still go with it.
Don't you see the leaves changing in about 2 months?
Oh, yeah. That crisp air. That crisp air that's blowing in your face.
If they practice at 4 a.m, maybe.
I was relieved. I was so relieved of the early practice because where they have us stand on the field against the concrete wall, it literally becomes 10 or 15 degrees hotter than whatever the day is. And you can cook over there. It was in the shade. It was awesome.
I usually lose. I don't actually practice during fall camp, but I usually lose about 7 pounds.
Yeah, standing around waiting for you to come over and talk. That'll do it. Put you there in the microwave.
Sort of what you would expect out of the first day, all sorts of optimism. And you can go across the country, Josh, and that's basically what you're going to get after day one.
Yeah, the first week-ish, I mean, it's all optimism, right? It's like it's an extension of media days where everybody's happy, everybody's done all the hard work to get there. But you know what? I think to me, I think there is just a little bit of a different vibe. Not that there was a bad vibe with Kyle Whittingham, right? I just think it's different, and I think that's an interesting side of this, of where Utah is now trying to live in a new era of Morgan Scalley, right? And there's some energy, some optimism about where they're headed. But you could tell in Morgan's voice that there's still plenty of things that he's stressed about, right? Like there's a lot of things that he wants to see improved and ready. He has the questions that we all have. Like he doesn't know yet because they don't have pads on. One of the biggest questions obviously is going to be offensive line, and he can't see that yet because there's no pads, and they don't understand how they're really going to gel together when somebody's coming at them at 100 miles an hour. So, I think there's excitement and optimism, but until those pads come on and they start hitting, there's going to be some questions still to be had about this team.
I think that's true, but I think you can draw it out. There's questions until the first game, and given the nature of the first game, there's questions until they play Arkansas. And then depending on how Arkansas looks, there can still be questions into the Big 12.
No, absolutely. I mean, there was, going into that, going into that 2024 season, they looked decent. Everything was going well, and then suddenly it fell apart, and it was really tough. So, you don't really know what you have until you get a few games in. I mean, I remember Kyle talking about it all the time about being, 5 games in until you really understand what you have. And I think, especially with the questions that Utah has this year on the offensive line, you're not really going to know until those week 4, week 5. There are different tests in those first 3 weeks. I mean, you do get an easier opponent and an FCS opponent in Idaho. You do go jump up into the SEC, and then you get Utah State. So you're going to get a wide range of opponents. But I'm curious to see, does that offensive line gel immediately, and do they come out there, looking great against Idaho? Or is this one of those games where everybody's excited to be in Rice-Eccles Stadium and you leave kind of disappointed because of the product that was put out there because things didn't work? I mean, I think that's really where the test is. But I believe that they feel like they've got what they need to, that they're going to be okay. It's not just going to be a sieve back there and everything's going to come back to Devin Dampier. But, I think that's going to be the biggest question, and then trying to see if these wide receivers really live up to the hype that they've built.
Last December was a month unlike anything that we've experienced in this town, at least since the 3 decades that I've been here. It starts off with Kalani to where assistants thought, we're out of here. We are leaving. We are going to Penn State, and Jay Hill's going to take over. Well, we know what happened there. And then it ends with, well, Jay Hill did leave. and he was the one to leave, and everybody thought that he was going to be the next head coach if Kalani left at BYU, right? And then you have stuff that comes out after the fact, and you were all over it, as far as information and the U of U's Mark Harlan saying he's disappointed it wasn't the smooth transition that was promised. We all remember that. Well, as I look at it, and just being up there for day one and talking to Morgan down in Texas, you were there, I talked to you down there, that actually the way it played out in terms of Kyle leaving and then taking a lot of assistance might actually be a good thing. And here's where I'm going with this, and get your thought on it, is that now all these guys, these newcomers, they are essentially an employee of Morgan Scalley. It's not, I was a coworker of Morgan Scalley's, now he's my boss. You don't have to worry about that. He hired a lot of these coaches, and then he promotes Colton Swan, and then obviously somebody like an Atawaya and Sharif Shaw got different job titles. So in a sense, it allows Morgan, not completely, but certainly probably, I guess go certainly probably, it doesn't make sense. So I'll eliminate the probably. I'll say certainly that it would have been different if Kyle had just retired, because all those coaches wouldn't have left with him, and then Morgan would have had guys that, they wouldn't have the fresh start. Now with all these new dudes up there, he does have a fresh start. So in my mind, that might be more beneficial for the development of Morgan Scalley as a head coach.
And I absolutely agree with that. That's something that I've been saying all along is, after you take a step back and all the frustrations that were had, this is a phenomenal opportunity for Morgan Scalley. One, I truly believe that Kyle would have stepped back and he wouldn't have been influencing Morgan Scalley and what he does, right? Like if he was that advisor or whatever the role was to the athletic director, I truly believe he'd let Morgan be Morgan. But there's always kind of that Nick Saban-esque attitude of like, he's hovering around the program. He's going to look, is he approving of what's going on? And that's always there. I think in this version, Morgan gets to be Morgan, right? He gets to hire his own staff. He doesn't have to leave a bunch of the holdovers. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those coaches he wanted. So it's not like, he didn't want him. But I think this is a great opportunity for him to really kind of get as much of a fresh start as he possibly can. It's either going to succeed or it's going to fail with him. And that's the way it should be, right? He shouldn't have somebody looking over his shoulder. Even if it's not really that way, it now allows him to be able to have that opportunity to be able to move forward in his own path. There's nobody standing in the way. Kyle Whittingham's focused on his own stuff. You've got all those other coaches that are focused on their other stuff. And sure, there is some holdover, like you said, Colton Swan, Sharif Shaw, Mark Atawaya, those types of coaches that are there. But you at least have a staff that is Morgan Scalley's staff. He got rid of the strength and conditioning coach and switched it up. There's a lot of different things that allow him to be able to make this his staff. And I think that's a really important thing for him in his first year, because now he doesn't feel like he's just inheriting Kyle Whittingham's, operation. This is Morgan Scalley's operation, and he gets to do it the way that he wants to, which is, I think, very important.
You two I got like 10 things I want to ask you right now, Josh. So I just gotta pick one. Let's start with one thing that did not work well under Kyle. Almost everything did. Kyle had a great run, but it was not a perfect run. And if there's one thing I always look at and always underperformed, and PK got sick of me saying it, wide receivers. They're not good enough. They should be better. And at one point when we were talking, I'm like, why don't they at least go out as the transfers became popular and like get the best guys out of the Mountain West? Mountain West football is actually pretty good. They send people to the NFL. When he needed a coordinator and he went to New Mexico, and he needed a quarterback and he went to New Mexico, paid off, jackpot. Mountain West football is pretty good. So now you got Morgan coming in, and there's some areas where there's no way he's going to match what Kyle does. But to me, there's also areas where he can surpass what Kyle does. And the number one thing I would say is the wide receiver group. It's got to be better. It's just, I don't even think it's been C- most years in the Pac-12 era. If you go all the way back to the Sugar Bowl, it was pretty good. But you got to go back a long way. Do you think with some of these Mountain West transfers that the wide receivers are actually going to be an asset to the offense as opposed to the group where you look at them and think, I hope they block for some downfield runs and don't mess it up?
No, I completely agree. And I think that was one of the biggest knocks, right? Like, it's not like Kyle Whittingham didn't try to get high end talent, but I think with so many years of experience of just saying, look, I'm going to run the ball down your throat, essentially, right? Like, obviously, he threw the ball, but because of that, I think it limited a lot of their potential. Yes, they had star tight ends, and that was a phenomenal opportunity. That was kind of the weird subtangent of that, where wide receiver was not solid most of the time, but what tight end, they
great.
found a gold mine there, right?
Yeah.
So like there was successes, but for whatever reason, he could not get wide receivers. And so I think this year, I think there's at least an attempt to, in the sense that it's not like Utah's just going to say, okay, we're going to throw it all the time, right? There's no, Kyle would always talk about, I want balance. I want like a 50-50 balance of passing and throwing. And everybody kind of like nod their head like, sure, okay. But I think what Morgan is trying to do is he wants to spread the ball around to as many people as possible. So it may still have a lot of run elements, especially if that offensive line can hold up. But there's going to be a lot of attempts to be able to start passing. And I think with Kevin McGivern, there's more of an emphasis to start passing because he understands that relaxes a little bit of the run game. And so I think there's going to be a nice little balance there. Obviously, it has to work out with these guys. They have to catch the ball. They have to be in sync with Devin Dampier. They've got to be able to do the right things. But I don't think you're going to get an emphasis on, okay, wide receivers, you're here to block. Every wide receiver knows that they have to block. I'm teaching my 12-year-old that when he's lined up as a wide receiver, he has to block as well. But I think there's a different attitude here where they want to throw the ball. They want to mix it up. Morgan wants to be more aggressive that way and not just maintain the status quo. He's younger, so he understands kind of the evolution of this game a little bit and understanding kind of how that's gone. But I think he wants his new wrinkles to it as well, where it's just, we want to spread the ball around and not just create this hot hand. I mean, if the hot hand works, it's great, but not just this one hand where you're just going to dump it off to, Ryan Davis last year. All it is, you're going to get a 5-yard out route or a 5-yard, whatever, dig route, whatever. You're going to get something that is going to be, dynamic. It's going to have a lot of variations, and it's going to allow them to be able to spread the field. So once again, proof is in the pudding, right? We got to see it, but I think there's at least going to be much more of an effort there. You're going to see Morgan Scalley trying to push the effort a little bit more to try to spread that ball around and at least make everybody an asset of the game, including the running backs who he wants to make part of that receiving game as well.
Tell us about the story that you did. He gave you access. I assume you asked him, and he said yes. And then, or at least somebody asked him. You maybe asked the sports information people, and they relayed it to him. I've read the story. Get inside because you're there sitting in their meetings in his office and whatnot. Just give us a highlight of that.
Yeah, honestly, it was a really cool opportunity. I mean, it's such a rare opportunity for many coaches to do it. Obviously, Kyle kept things pretty close to the vest. It's not that Morgan doesn't either, but I think especially in this first year, it was an opportunity to kind of showcase how he operates, right? And then, like, at the end of the day, many people are going to look at this and it's still an in-house office job, right? You come in there, you go to several meetings, you're doing a lot of stuff. So like that side of it, many people are going to find as boring, but there's a lot of the little nuances, how you saw Morgan kind of operate, right? He's very much into wanting to create a culture, and it's not that him just saying it, right? Like he very much so is trying to build that culture within that program and trying to live it and try to hold people accountable to it. But it was cool to kind of see the operation of how he was able to enforce that and trying to get the guys to kind of buy in. And there's a lot of positivity and excitement about that, right? Even in staff meetings, there's a lot of buy-in and excitement towards the directions that Morgan wants. Now, look, it's not like everybody's standing up and clapping after everything Morgan says, right? Like we get that. It's a meeting. But like, I think it's kind of the direction that he's taking things, right? It's he wants to build a personal touch where, the third string, running back feels the same as the starting running back or the quarterback, right? There's a personal connection with Morgan Scalley himself. It's not just the coaching staff, it's himself. He wants to be able to make himself accessible. He wants to be able to make his coaches accessible while also kind of preaching this opportunity of saying, hey, like if you feel like there's ways to do Utah better, let's talk. You have to have evidence of it. You've got to be able to support that evidence. But I think there's a lot of that. He wants to support these athletes every possible way that he can. And that was definitely shown in all the meetings that he took part in. There's a lot of, recruiting meetings. There's different meetings to help him become a better head coach, right? And different people on staff presenting him ideas. So, it's hard to wrap all that day into one, but I think that's the overarching theme is he wants to create a personal touch in a business that's very transactional. And I think that's a hard balance to make, but you're seeing that. The fact that he showed up to the airport to pick up Devin Dampier after his surgery is that little touch that kind of goes to show who Morgan Scalley is. Yes, Devin Dampier is a star quarterback, and obviously you're going to take care of that guy. But the fact that you can go out of your way to do these things, that's the little things that these players are talking about. That's kind of, the player's coach is what a lot of people will say. That's how Morgan is approaching it. And I think that's just the little subtle differences that Kyle operated in.
Josh Furlong covering the Utes for KSL Sports. I want to flip one of my earlier comments here because I think this is so important for Morgan. And the farther he can kick the can down the road, the better, obviously. But one of Kyle's great strengths was when things got wrong, they often got fixed quickly. And after losses, there were bounce backs. Now, we can all point to, multiple quarterback injuries and a 7-game losing streak a couple years ago. Sure, there are examples where things didn't get fixed. But those Rose Bowl teams both lost 4 times. And one of them was the Rose Bowl, so you don't bounce back. That's the end of the year. But to have 3 losses along the way and still find a way to get to the conference title game and win it and get to the Rose Bowl, Kyle's teams were always resilient. And you can say it quickly and it sounds easy. I've rooted for a lot of San Diego teams that had 0 resilience. So I'm really curious, where does that come from? Do Morgan teams have that quality? You don't really want to find out because you want the team to go 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. What do you think, and what signs have you seen that maybe give you a hint, or maybe you don't know and you're just waiting to see for yourself?
Yeah, I think you don't ultimately know, right? Especially as the head coach. But I think there's many elements of him as a defensive coordinator that showcase that. And one of the most important, I would say, is probably that 2024 season. That defense could have locked it up and said, you know what, we're done. We're tired of trying to win games for you guys. You can't even go score 10 points. You can't score 14 points. We're doing everything we can to help you. There's so many games that way where Utah literally scored 2 touchdowns and they win those games, and Utah couldn't do it. That defense, talking to Morgan, he said that season was probably one of his favorite seasons as a defensive coordinator, just to watch those defenders because they never gave up. From the first game to the last game, they continued to give their all to that team. And I think, to me, that culture of the RSNB, right? Like, you're going to hear that a ton with him, and you heard it a ton on the defensive side. And he's adopting that a little bit to the offensive side of the ball, and kind of that mindset that, like, you just are always resilient. You're moving, you're doing all these things to help. That's got to translate to the offensive side of the ball. But I think if there's any elements there was the 24 season, some other seasons where that defense, they continued, right? They continued to fight for each other, and they continued to do what they needed to the very end. There were several games Morgan talked about the offense not living it up and the defense just continually fighting. I think that is the mindset and the approach that Morgan Scalley takes to this team, right? At the end of the day, you have to see it. You have to believe it. There's got to be a connection with this team. The offensive side was clearly fractured. They didn't have a lot of great success. And I don't know that they were incredibly resilient on that side, but the defensive side was. And I think that's that culture that he's bringing into it, of saying, look, you fight to the bitter end, even if things aren't going well for you. He builds that connection. There's a lot of camaraderie there. And as long as that can translate to the entirety of the team, and that team is connected, which I think this team is, there can be a lot of resilience there. There can be a lot of that fighting through it, even if this season isn't the dream season that everybody expects, where, hey, Utah's a playoff team in Morgan Scalley's first season. I think there's going to be some fight there. But until we see it on the field, it's really hard to know. But I do believe that Morgan is building something like that. And that's probably the most recent example of something of that caliber.
Josh, thanks for a few minutes. We appreciate it. We'll see you up on the hill covering the Utes all year long. And people can follow you at KSL Sports and on social media for all the latest from the U. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Josh Furlong, join us. You can follow him. Go to KSLSports.com.
Surprise.
Wait, do I know you?
You use your Discover Cashback card to earn 5% cashback on restaurants all quarter.
Yeah.
Now, It's payback time.
Whoa, hold on.
Go ahead.
Oh, you mean my Discover cashback.
I told you there'd be payback.
You know, you have a weird way of delivering good news.
I'm working on that.
Activate and earn 5% cash back at different categories each quarter on up to $1,500 in purchases.
Terms apply. See discover.com/5 for details.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.